The small house at the edge of the town always seemed quiet, almost too quiet for the life that went on inside it. The walls were thin, and the windows showed signs of years of wear. Inside, the air often carried the smell of soap, bread, and a little bit of dust that seemed to settle everywhere. In one corner of the living room sat a small old keyboard. Its keys were uneven, some slightly chipped, and it often made a slightly broken sound when pressed too hard. But to the young girl in the house, it was the most beautiful thing in the world. She was not like other children in the neighborhood. While others ran around barefoot, laughing loudly in the streets or playing with shiny toys, she spent her time sitting quietly, her small fingers moving over the keys of that old keyboard. Sometimes when she thought no one was watching, she would close her eyes and imagine herself playing a real piano, a grand piano that sparkled under soft lights, filling a huge hall with beautiful music. She dreamed of it often, dreaming so vividly that the sound of the piano in her mind felt almost real. Her mother was a hard-working woman who spent long hours cleaning houses in the town. She never had much money, but she always tried to give her daughter love, encouragement, and hope. Some days when she came home exhausted, she would find her daughter sitting by the keyboard, completely absorbed in the music she was trying to make. At first, she smiled softly, enjoying the sound even if it was not perfect. But as time passed, she noticed something remarkable. The girl was improving slowly, her fingers moving more confidently over the keys and her ears picking up the tiniest of notes that made the music sound sweeter. It was not easy. The house was small and the keyboard was not meant for serious practice. The sound sometimes broke, and the girl often grew frustrated when she could not make the note she wanted. She would sigh deeply, her small hands pressing the keys harder than softer, trying again and again. Outside, the neighborhood children would sometimes peek inside, giggling when they heard her funny music. "She thinks she's a real musician," they would whisper. Some adults would shake their heads, thinking she was wasting her time. But the girl paid no attention. She had learned early in life that people often do not understand dreams that are bigger than their own. Her days were filled with simple routines. She woke up early to help her mother clean and prepare small meals. She went to school, where her teachers noticed her quiet, focused nature. She was polite to everyone and did not speak much unless spoken to. Yet whenever she returned home, she would rush to the corner of the living room, sit by the keyboard, and lose herself in her music. Music had become her companion, her friend, and her secret world. In those moments, nothing else existed. The problems, the teasing, and even the long hours of hard work her mother endured all seemed to disappear. Sometimes, the girl would sit at the keyboard for hours without touching a note. She would listen to the music playing in her mind, imagining the grand halls, the audience, and the applause. Then slowly her fingers would begin to move. The sound she created was simple at first, a few notes that almost seemed hesitant, but as she practiced, the music grew stronger, more confident. She discovered the way to make soft sounds, loud sounds, and even to tell stories through her music. It was magical, and she knew that even if no one else understood, she was learning something special. Her mother often watched quietly, feeling a mix of pride and worry. She knew the world was not kind to those who came from humble beginnings. People would laugh, judge, and sometimes even try to crush dreams that seemed impossible. But she also knew something important. Her daughter had a fire in her heart, a determination that could not be dimmed by laughter or doubt. She would gently place her hand on her daughter's shoulder sometimes and whisper, "Keep going, my love. One day the world will hear your music." Those words became a mantra for the girl, echoing in her mind whenever she felt tired or discouraged. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the thin curtains, the girl was practicing a new melody she had been trying to create. Her hands moved faster than usual, her eyes shining with concentration. She pressed a wrong key, then another, and for a moment the music sounded chaotic. She froze, ready to give up. But then she took a deep breath and began again, slowly at first, then with more confidence. She noticed how her fingers were learning the pattern, how the notes were beginning to sound like the song she had imagined in her mind. A small smile appeared on her face. This was what she loved: the challenge, the discovery, the small victories that came when she refused to quit. Even though the girl was often laughed at, she had her own ways of celebrating small successes. When she got a melody right, she would hum it softly, dance a little in her small living room, or run to her mother to share the moment. Her mother would clap, sometimes with tears in her eyes, proud that her daughter had found a light in a world that could be harsh and unforgiving. The girl knew she was lucky to have her mother, and she cherished every bit of encouragement she received. Neighbors often passed by and commented. Some laughed at her dedication. "Why does she spend so much time on that broken keyboard?" they would ask. "She will never be a real pianist." The girl heard them, but she did not feel angry or discouraged. Instead, she used their laughter as fuel. It reminded her that she was doing something different, something that mattered to her even if it seemed impossible to others. She understood that people often fear what they do not understand. Her music was her own path, and she was determined to walk it, step by step. School was a place where her talent remained largely unnoticed. She was quiet, polite, and diligent, but the teachers never asked her to play, and classmates assumed she was just like any other shy girl. Only a few friends knew about her passion, and even they did not fully understand the depth of her talent. Yet she was content. Music was her secret world, her safe place where she could dream without limits. Every day after school and chores, she would return to her keyboard, creating melodies that spoke of hope, sadness, joy, and imagination. Each note became a piece of her story, a reflection of the life she lived and the life she dreamed of having. As months turned into years, the girl grew more skilled. Her fingers became stronger, more precise, and her sense of rhythm improved. She began experimenting with different styles of music, mixing soft, gentle notes with powerful emotional sounds that made her mother stop and listen in wonder. The old keyboard, which had once seemed fragile and insufficient, became her bridge to a bigger world. She learned to bring out the best in it, to coax the sweetest sounds from the worn-out keys. In her mind, she pictured a real piano, imagining that one day she would sit at it and create music that would leave people speechless. The world outside, however, remained challenging. Life was never easy for the girl or her mother. Money was tight, and some days were filled with worry about bills, food, and the next day's work. Still, they faced these challenges together. Her mother worked tirelessly, often coming home exhausted, yet she never let her fatigue dampen her daughter's spirit. Sometimes she would sit beside her, letting her hands hover over the keyboard, guiding them gently, whispering, "You are doing something special. Keep going." Those moments became treasures, small memories of love and encouragement that the girl held close in her heart. The girl's dreams began to grow larger. She imagined performing in grand halls, wearing elegant clothes, and having people listen silently as she played. She imagined traveling to other cities and countries, sharing her music with those who might never have heard such melodies. Even though these dreams seemed distant, almost impossible, they filled her with a sense of purpose. She understood that talent alone was not enough. It required patience, hard work, and courage to face the world, and she was ready to do whatever it took to make her dreams come true. Every night as the town grew quiet and the streetlights flickered on, she would play her music in the dim light of the living room. The melodies would float through the small house, mingling with the sounds of the night, the distant barking of a dog, the rustling of leaves, the faint hum of the wind. And sometimes in those quiet moments she felt as if her music reached beyond the walls, touching a world she could not yet see. It was a feeling of hope, of possibility, and of unspoken promise. She knew that one day her music would take her somewhere far beyond the small house, beyond the teasing and laughter, beyond the limits others tried to place on her life. Despite the struggles, despite the laughter of those who did not understand her, she never stopped playing. Her fingers continued to dance over the keys, learning, growing, and transforming simple notes into songs that told her story. Each day, each melody became a step closer to a dream she held tightly in her heart, and even though no one else could see it yet, she knew that her journey was only beginning. The girl's life was simple, but it was full of determination, love, and music. And though she was small and often overlooked, she carried a spark inside her that could not be dimmed by ridicule or doubt. It was the spark of a dreamer, a young girl who believed in the power of her music and who refused to give up, no matter how impossible the world seemed. In that small living room with a worn-out keyboard and a mother who never stopped believing, the girl was learning something far more important than notes or melodies. She was learning courage. She was learning perseverance. She was learning that even in a world that laughs at the humble, there is room for greatness. And as her fingers continued to play day after day, The world outside her door remained unaware that it was witnessing the quiet beginnings of something extraordinary. The days passed quietly in the small town, and the girl's life continued much as it had before. She practiced her music every day, her fingers growing stronger and more confident with each passing moment. Her mother watched from the kitchen, folding laundry or preparing simple meals, proud of the way her daughter never gave up. Life was still difficult. Money was tight, and there were many days when the family struggled to pay for even the smallest things. But in the middle of these hardships there was hope. Hope that one day, her music could change everything. One morning a letter arrived at the house, delivered by a young boy from the neighborhood, who often ran errands for the wealthier families. The envelope was crisp and slightly heavy, with neat writing across the front. The girl's mother opened it carefully, and her eyes widened slightly as she read the words. It was an invitation to a talent showcase being held in the mansion where she worked. The showcase was meant to celebrate local talent and give children from nearby neighborhoods a chance to perform. The girl's heart raced as she read the details. She looked up at her mother, her eyes shining with excitement and nervousness. "Do you think I should go?" she asked softly. Her mother smiled, brushing a strand of hair from the girl's face. "Of course," she said. "This could be your chance. You have worked so hard and people need to hear what you can do. Don't worry about what anyone else thinks. Just play from your heart." The girl nodded, her mind already spinning with possibilities. She began imagining the grand piano that awaited her at the mansion, the polished keys, and the room filled with people who would listen to her music. But as the days went by, doubt began to creep in. She remembered the laughter of the neighbors, the whispers of people who said she could never be a real musician. She wondered if the judges at the showcase would see her talent or just notice the way she dressed, her simple clothes, and the fact that she came from a humble home. Her mother noticed her hesitation. One evening, as the girl sat quietly at the old keyboard, staring at the notes she had written in a small notebook, her mother came and sat beside her. "Listen," she said gently, placing her hand over her daughter's. "People may laugh and they may not understand, but this is your chance to show them your heart, not just your skill. Play because it makes you happy. Play because it is who you are. The rest does not matter." The girl took a deep breath, feeling the words sink in. She closed her eyes and imagined herself on the stage, not worrying about the audience, not worrying about their judgments, only letting the music flow from her fingers. That night she practiced longer than ever before. She went over her favorite pieces, repeating them until they sounded just right in her ears. Though she knew they were far from perfect, still she felt ready in her heart, ready to step into a world that had always seemed so far away. The day of the talent showcase finally arrived. The girl and her mother left their small house early in the morning. The streets seemed different that day, filled with people hurrying to the mansion, dressed in bright clothes and carrying gifts for the children performing. The girl clutched her small bag, containing sheet music she had copied by hand and a few personal notes to remind herself to stay calm. Her heart beat faster with every step closer to the mansion, a mixture of excitement and fear twisting in her stomach. When they arrived, the mansion seemed larger and more beautiful than anything the girl had ever seen. The gates were tall and polished, the gardens perfectly trimmed, and the marble floors inside gleamed under the sunlight. She felt a moment of awe and nervousness, unsure if she truly belonged in such a place. She tugged at her mother's hand. "What if they laugh at me?" she whispered. Her mother smiled, bending down to meet her eyes. "Then let them laugh. You are here to play your music and nothing else matters. They will see who you really are soon enough." Inside the mansion, children from wealthier families were already gathered, practicing their pieces on grand pianos that seemed enormous to the girl. Their hands were confident, their movements polished, and their teachers hovered nearby, offering guidance. Some of them glanced at the girl as she entered, noticing her simple dress and the old notebook she carried. A few whispered to each other, snickering quietly. "She doesn't belong here," they said. "Look at her. She will never play like we do." The girl felt her cheeks flush, but she held her head high, clutching her notebook tightly. She remembered her mother's words and focused on the music she loved. She watched the other children perform first, noticing how they moved and how the audience reacted. Some performances were flawless, others less so, but all were met with polite applause. The girl realized that the audience did not always know what real emotion sounded like. They only knew what looked perfect. That thought made her nervous but also strengthened her resolve. She would not focus on perfection. She would focus on truth, on feeling, on letting the music speak. Finally, it was her turn. She was led to the stage where a grand piano waited, its black surface shining under the lights. The audience looked at her curiously, some smiling politely, others whispering. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. The judges, seated at a long table in front of the stage, glanced at her briefly. One of them raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by her appearance. The girl heard a few stifled laughs from the back of the room. She felt a pang of fear, her fingers trembling slightly as she reached for the keys. For a moment she considered stepping back, leaving the stage, and escaping the scrutiny. But then she remembered the nights spent practicing, the hours of dedication and her mother's encouragement. She placed her hands on the keys and closed her eyes. The first notes were soft and hesitant, trembling just as her hands had. A few in the audience exchanged amused looks, whispering that the girl had no idea what she was doing. But she did not falter. She let the music flow from her heart, slowly at first, then with more confidence. The melody began simply, soft and gentle, like a story being told quietly. Her fingers moved carefully, then faster, each note gaining clarity. The laughter and whispers in the room faded as people began to notice something different. This was not just playing for show. This was playing with emotion, with honesty, with a story behind every sound. The girl's eyes were closed and her entire being focused on the music. She did not think about the audience or the judges anymore. She only thought about the sound, the way the notes danced in the air, and the way her fingers could shape them into something beautiful. As the performance continued, the atmosphere in the room changed. The soft snickers from the beginning were replaced by silence. People leaned forward in their seats, captivated by the unexpected depth of her music. The judges, initially skeptical, exchanged surprised glances. They had underestimated her, assuming that a girl from such a humble background could not produce such artistry. Yet here she was, filling the room with a melody that spoke of hope, longing, and determination. The girl moved through the piece with growing confidence, each note carrying her story. She imagined the small house she lived in, the worn-out keyboard she had practiced on, and the sacrifices her mother had made for her. All of these thoughts poured into her music, giving it life beyond the technical skill of her fingers. The audience could feel the emotion, even if they did not know the story behind it. Some closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. Others leaned forward, unable to believe that such talent could come from someone so young and modest. Finally, as the last notes lingered in the air, there was a brief moment of silence. The room seemed to hold its breath, unsure how to respond. Then slowly, applause began to fill the space, starting softly and growing louder with each passing second. The judges stood, clapping and nodding in appreciation. The audience followed, many of them on their feet, cheering for the girl who had surprised them all. She opened her eyes, feeling a rush of emotion, pride, relief, and disbelief all mingling together. Her mother, standing at the side of the room, wiped tears from her eyes. She rushed forward, wrapping her daughter in a hug. "I knew you could do it," she whispered. The girl smiled through her own tears, realizing that this was only the beginning. She had faced her fear, played from her heart, and shown the world a glimpse of her true talent. And though the journey ahead would not be easy, she had proven to herself that she was capable of greatness. As she left the stage, the girl felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. People continued to talk about her performance, some praising the beauty of her music, others marveling at the emotion she had conveyed. She knew that some would continue to doubt her. Some would continue to judge based on appearances, but for the first time she felt seen, not for her dress, her background, or her small stature, but for the music that had lived in her heart for so long. That evening, as she and her mother returned home, the girl carried with her a sense of hope she had never felt before. She understood that this was just the first step on a long journey. There would be more challenges, more doubters, and more moments of fear. But she had learned something invaluable, that courage, determination, and a true love for what you do can break through the walls of doubt and judgment. And in the quiet of their small house, as the girl sat once again at her old keyboard, she played a melody of triumph and joy. It was not perfect, but it did not need to be. It was hers, and it carried the promise of a future she was only beginning to imagine. After the talent showcase, the girl's life began to change. though not all at once. People in the town whispered about her performance, spreading stories of the girl from the small house who had surprised everyone with her music. Some neighbors were amazed and proud, while others remained skeptical, convinced that it had been a one-time miracle. The girl herself felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She knew that while the applause had been wonderful, it was only the beginning of a much longer journey. Every morning she returned to her old keyboard with a new sense of purpose. Her hands moved more confidently, her fingers remembering the melodies she had played at the showcase, and her mind filled with ideas for new pieces. She experimented with rhythms she had never tried before, mixing soft, gentle notes with bold, strong chords. Each time she played, she imagined the grand piano at the mansion, and it inspired her to reach for sounds that were more complex, more expressive. The music was no longer just a pastime. It had become a language through which she expressed her emotions, hopes, and dreams. Her mother noticed the change immediately. She watched her daughter with quiet pride as the girl stayed at the keyboard for hours, her eyes closed, lost in the music. "You have grown so much," her mother said one evening, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "The world is beginning to see what I have always known." The girl smiled, though a small flicker of doubt remained. She knew the world could be cruel, and talent alone did not always guarantee success. Still, the applause and recognition had given her confidence she had never known before, and she was determined to keep moving forward. The girl began receiving invitations to play at small local events. Some were school concerts, others were community gatherings, and a few were private performances for families who had heard of her talent. Each time she played, she noticed how people's reactions changed. The whispers of doubt turned into murmurs of admiration, and the laughter that had once followed her now seemed distant. Children who had teased her in the past watched in awe, unable to hide their surprise. Adults who had doubted her talent nodded appreciatively, sometimes even offering advice or encouragement. Despite these small victories, the girl remained humble. She knew that every performance was an opportunity to learn, and she never took her talent for granted. Each time she sat at the keyboard, she reminded herself of the hours she had spent practicing alone, the nights when she had played softly so as not to disturb her mother, and the struggles they had faced together. The memories of her old house and her worn keyboard were always with her, grounding her, keeping her focused on what truly mattered, the music and the story it carried. One afternoon, she received an invitation to play at a larger event, a charity concert being held in the town's community hall. The event promised a bigger audience, including local officials and people with influence in the music world. The girl felt a mix of excitement and fear. The hall was larger than any stage she had played on, and the audience would be filled with strangers whose reactions she could not predict. She spent days preparing, practicing every note meticulously, and imagining herself performing with confidence. Her mother, as always, offered quiet encouragement, reminding her to focus on the music rather than the audience. On the day of the concert, the community hall was filled with people. Rows of chairs were packed, and a small stage stood at the front with a shiny black piano waiting. The girl felt her heart race as she walked toward it, clutching a sheet of music she had copied carefully. Some audience members whispered among themselves, curious to see the young girl who had become the talk of the town. A few older musicians looked skeptical, unsure if someone so young could truly perform with skill and feeling. The girl took a deep breath and reminded herself of the showcase at the mansion. She had faced fear before and emerged stronger. When she sat at the piano, her hands hovered over the keys for a moment. The first note was soft, almost hesitant, but as she played, the music began to flow more naturally. She closed her eyes, letting her fingers guide her, and allowed herself to feel the emotion behind every note. The melody started simply, gentle and inviting, then grew in complexity and depth. Each chord carried a story. Each sequence of notes painted a picture of hope, struggle, and triumph. The audience began to listen more intently, their initial curiosity turning into quiet amazement. As she played, the girl noticed how the room seemed to change. The murmurs faded, replaced by an almost tangible silence. People leaned forward in their seats, captivated by the unexpected power of her music. Even the older musicians, who had been skeptical at first, exchanged glances of admiration. They could see that this was not just technical skill, it was passion, heart, and a deep understanding of what music could convey. The girl's hands moved with confidence, her fingers dancing over the keys, creating sounds that seemed to rise and fall like waves. She was no longer the nervous child from the small house. She was a storyteller, sharing a piece of herself with everyone in the room. Halfway through her performance, the girl introduced a section she had composed herself, inspired by her own experiences. It was a melody full of emotion, sometimes soft and delicate, other times bold and commanding. She imagined the moments she had struggled, the times she had been laughed at, and the nights she had practiced in silence. All of these feelings poured into her music, creating a piece that felt alive, real, and deeply moving. The audience could feel the sincerity in every note, and many were visibly moved, some even wiping tears from their eyes. When she reached the final notes, the girl paused for a moment, letting the last sound linger in the air. The room remained silent for a heartbeat longer, as if holding on to the magic of the music before erupting into applause. The sound was overwhelming, filling the hall and echoing through the walls. People stood cheering and clapping, some shouting words of praise. The girl opened her eyes, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. She had given everything she had, and the response was beyond anything she could have imagined. Her mother rushed to the stage, tears in her eyes, and hugged her tightly. "I am so proud of you," she whispered. The girl smiled, feeling the warmth of her mother's love and support. She realized that this moment was not just about her talent. It was about perseverance, courage, and the bond she shared with her mother. Every note she had played carried the story of their life together, the struggles and the triumphs, the laughter and the tears. And in that moment she understood that her music had the power to touch hearts, to inspire, and to change the way people saw her and her story. After the concert, people came forward to speak with her. Some offered opportunities to perform in other towns, others gave advice or encouragement, and a few simply wanted to express how much her music had moved them. The girl listened politely, feeling grateful but also focused on the lessons she had learned. She knew that every performance was a chance to grow, to learn something new, and to connect with others through the universal language of music. She did not let the praise overwhelm her, nor did she let doubt creep back in. She had discovered something important. Her music was her voice, and it could speak louder than words. As the days turned into weeks, the girl continued to practice diligently. She experimented with new melodies, explored different styles, and composed pieces that reflected her experiences and dreams. Her reputation grew, and more people began to recognize her talent. Some who had once doubted her now offered support, while others remained skeptical. But the girl no longer worried about their opinions. She had learned that true artistry came from within, from dedication, emotion, and authenticity, rather than seeking approval from others. Her mother continued to be her greatest supporter, always there to offer encouragement, guidance, and love. She reminded the girl that talent alone was not enough. It required perseverance, humility, and the courage to face challenges. Together, they navigated the small successes and setbacks that came with pursuing a dream. The girl learned to balance her ambition with gratitude, understanding that each opportunity was a gift, each performance a chance to share a piece of herself with the world. One evening, after a particularly long day of practice and reflection, the girl sat at her keyboard and looked back on her journey so far. She remembered the small house, the worn keyboard, and the nights of quiet practice. She thought of the showcase at the mansion, the applause, and the moments of doubt she had faced. And she realized how far she had come, not just in skill, but in courage, confidence, and self-belief. She understood that the journey was far from over, but she was ready to face whatever came next. The girl's story was no longer just about a child from a humble home learning to play the piano. It had become a story of resilience, determination, and the power of passion. Every performance, every note carried a message that even in the face of doubt and ridicule, it is possible to rise, to shine, and to inspire others. And as she played that evening, her music flowed freely, full of emotion, hope, and promise, touching not only her own heart but the hearts of everyone who listened. The journey ahead would bring more challenges, more audiences, and more opportunities to grow. But the girl knew one thing for certain: she would never stop playing, never stop dreaming, and never stop believing in the power of her music. And with that thought, she played on, her fingers dancing over the keys, creating melodies that spoke of life, love, struggle, and triumph, melodies that would carry her far beyond the small house where it had all begun. After the charity concert, The girl's life began to change in ways she could never have imagined. People in the town now recognized her when she walked through the streets. Some smiled warmly, whispering praise or giving small compliments. Others were still skeptical, but they could not deny the growing reputation she had earned. Invitations to play in more local events began to arrive, and even a few people from nearby towns expressed interest in hearing her perform. Every opportunity was a chance for her to grow, to challenge herself, and to share the music that had always lived in her heart. Her mother, as always, was her anchor. She continued to work hard, cleaning houses and managing the household, but she never missed a chance to attend her daughter's performances. She would sit quietly in the audience, her hands folded, her eyes shining with pride. She knew the sacrifices she had made, the long hours of work and the struggles they had faced as a family had all led to this moment. Her daughter's success was more than talent. It was courage, perseverance, and a relentless dedication to something she loved. One day, a letter arrived that made the girl's heart pound with excitement. It was an invitation to participate in a larger regional music competition. The event promised an even bigger audience, including respected judges from the world of music, and the opportunity to earn recognition beyond her town. The girl felt a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. She had never performed for an audience this large or for judges with such experience. The thought of being in a room full of people who expected excellence was both thrilling and terrifying. Her mother held her hands tightly and looked into her eyes. "This is your chance," she said softly. "Remember, it is not about impressing anyone. Play with your heart and they will see who you truly are. You have the talent and you have worked hard. Believe in yourself." The girl nodded, feeling the reassurance in her mother's voice. She knew that the upcoming competition would test more than her skill. It would test her courage, her focus, and her ability to stay true to herself under pressure. The day of the regional competition arrived. The hall was large, grander than any stage she had played on before, with rows of seats stretching far back and bright lights shining down on the polished floor. A grand piano stood at the center of the stage, gleaming under the lights, waiting for her. Children from different towns arrived, dressed in elegant clothes, carrying expensive sheet music, and escorted by teachers or parents who looked proud and confident. The girl's modest dress and simple notebook made her feel small in comparison, but she remembered her mother's words and focused on the music that had always guided her. The competition began, and one by one children performed with impressive skill. Some played complex pieces flawlessly, while others added personal touches that showed creativity. The girl watched them all carefully, noting the techniques and styles, but she reminded herself that her music was her own. It was not about imitating others or meeting expectations. It was about expressing her story, her emotions, and the hours of dedication she had poured into her craft. Finally, it was her turn. She walked onto the stage, feeling the weight of all the eyes upon her. Some in the audience whispered, others smiled politely, and a few judges leaned forward, curious about the young girl from a small town who'd been described as a hidden talent. She sat at the piano, placing her fingers lightly on the keys, and took a deep breath. For a moment, doubt crept in, but she pushed it away, focusing on the music that had been her companion for so many years. The first notes were soft, hesitant, and careful, as if testing the space around her. Then gradually the melody grew stronger, more confident. Her fingers moved with precision and grace, creating a story and sound that spoke of her life, her struggles, and her dreams. The audience leaned forward, captivated by the depth of emotion and the unexpected maturity in her playing. This was not just technical skill, it was artistry, passion, and sincerity, woven together in every note. Midway through the piece, she introduced a section she had composed herself, inspired by moments of both hardship and hope. The music rose and fell like waves, sometimes gentle, sometimes powerful, capturing the attention and hearts of everyone listening. She felt the energy of the audience, but she did not let it distract her. She played as she always had, immersed in the music, letting it flow naturally, telling her story through every chord, every note, every pause. By the time she reached the final section, the audience was silent, listening in awe. Even the judges, who had initially appeared reserved, were clearly impressed. Some nodded slowly as if acknowledging the depth and skill of her performance. Others exchanged quiet whispers, sharing their amazement at the young girl who had come from humble beginnings and was now commanding such attention with her music. The girl's heart swelled, not with pride, but with the joy of knowing that her music had reached them, had spoken to them in a way that words could not. As the last note faded into the air, there was a brief moment of stunned silence. Then, the hall erupted into applause, louder and more sustained than anything she had ever experienced. People stood clapping and cheering, some shouting words of admiration. The girl felt a rush of emotion, relief, happiness, and disbelief all mingled together. She looked toward her mother, who was clapping with tears in her eyes, and felt a wave of gratitude for the woman who had always believed in her, even when the world had not. The judges called her forward, offering kind words and praise for her performance. One of them, a respected musician, said, "You have a rare gift. Your music is not just about technique, it is about heart, soul, and storytelling. Keep nurturing this talent and it will take you far." The girl nodded, feeling both humbled and motivated. She realized that this was more than a competition. It was validation of her hard work, her perseverance, and her ability to rise above the doubt and laughter of those who had underestimated her. After the event, many people came to speak with her, offering opportunities to perform in other towns, scholarships for music programs, and mentorship from experienced musicians. Some asked her to teach younger children, to inspire them with her story and talent. The girl listened carefully, grateful for the opportunities, but she remained focused on the lessons she had learned: humility, dedication, and staying true to her music. She understood that success was not just about recognition. It was about growth, passion, and the ability to touch the hearts of others through her art. In the weeks following the competition, the girl practiced even more diligently. She explored new compositions, experimented with styles she had never tried, and challenged herself to reach higher levels of mastery. Her mother continued to support her, attending rehearsals, helping with schedules, and offering encouragement whenever doubt or fatigue crept in. They often spoke quietly about the future, imagining the possibilities, but always grounding themselves in the present, in the music that had carried them this far. The girl also began to reflect on the laughter and doubt she had faced in the past. She remembered the neighbors who had mocked her, the children who had whispered about her abilities, and the skepticism of those who had underestimated her, but she no longer felt anger or sadness. Instead, she felt gratitude because their doubt had fueled her determination. Each moment of ridicule had pushed her to practice harder, to focus more, and to believe more deeply in her own abilities. She realized that even negative experiences could be transformed into motivation, shaping her journey in unexpected ways. One evening, as she practiced a new composition she had written, she paused and looked at the small keyboard she had started on. Its keys were worn, its sound imperfect, yet it had been the foundation of everything she had achieved. She smiled, realizing that the journey from that modest instrument to grand stages had been as much about her heart as her hands. It had been about persistence, courage, and the love of music that had carried her through every challenge. She placed her fingers on the keys gently, playing a soft melody of gratitude and reflection, honoring the beginnings that had shaped her. As time went on, more opportunities arose. Invitations to perform at regional festivals, school events, and community gatherings became frequent. Each event brought new audiences, new experiences, and new lessons. The girl learned to adapt to different pianos, to connect with different crowds, and to convey emotion in ways that resonated with people from all walks of life. She discovered that music was not just about notes and rhythm. It was about connection, storytelling, and sharing a part of herself that words could never express. Through it all, her mother remained her anchor, guiding her, supporting her, and celebrating each achievement. The bond between them grew stronger, built on love, trust, and shared dreams. The girl often reflected on the sacrifices her mother had made, the long hours of work, and the quiet encouragement that had kept her going. She understood that her success was not hers alone. It was a reflection of their journey together, a testament to the power of belief, love, and resilience. By the end of this chapter of her life, the girl had grown not only as a musician, but as a person. She had faced fear, overcome doubt, and discovered the strength within herself to pursue her dreams. She had transformed laughter and skepticism into fuel for her determination, and she had learned that true success was not measured by applause alone, but by the impact her music had on the hearts of others. And as she looked ahead to future performances, competitions, and opportunities, she felt ready to continue her journey, to share her story, and to inspire others with the music that had always been a part of her soul. As the girl grew older, her music became more than just a talent or a pastime. It became her identity, her way of speaking to the world without words. Every note she played carried her story, the quiet evenings at the small keyboard, the laughter she had faced, the struggles of life, and the unshakable love and support of her mother. She understood that her journey had shaped not only her skill but also her heart, teaching her lessons that could never be learned from a book or a teacher alone. The recognition she had earned from the regional competition continued to open doors. Invitations to perform in larger towns, at music festivals, and in community events became more frequent. Some offers came with opportunities to receive advanced musical training, mentorship from accomplished musicians, and even scholarships to prestigious programs. Each offer was a reminder of how far she had come, yet she approached them with humility, knowing that her journey was not just about fame or accolades. It was about the music itself, the joy it brought, and the connection it created between her and the people who listened. Her mother remained her constant guide. Even after years of working tirelessly, she never stopped showing pride in her daughter's achievements. She attended nearly every performance, sometimes quietly in the back of the room, sometimes leaning forward, her eyes shining with emotion. She had always believed in her daughter, even when the world laughed, whispered, or doubted. And now, watching her daughter's music touch hearts, she felt a quiet, profound satisfaction. The sacrifices, the long hours, and the modest life they had lived had all been steps leading to this moment. One day, the girl received an invitation to perform at a renowned concert hall in the city. It was a prestigious event, attended by influential figures in the music world, critics, and a large audience of people who had never heard her play before. The thought of playing on such a stage was both thrilling and terrifying. The hall was grand, with polished floors, tall ceilings, and a piano that gleamed under the stage lights. The girl felt a familiar flutter of nerves as she imagined the audience waiting, the judges evaluating, and the pressure of the moment ahead. She spent weeks preparing, practicing tirelessly, refining her compositions, and imagining every possible scenario. She recalled every performance she had ever given, the first showcase, the charity concert, the regional competition, and remembered how each step had brought her here. Her confidence was not just in her skill, but in the journey she had walked. She understood that fear was natural, but courage was choosing to move forward despite it. And so she carried her music, her passion, and her heart onto that stage with quiet determination. When she arrived at the hall, she was greeted by the organizers and led to the stage. The audience was already seated, their murmurs filling the vast space. Some recognized her name from stories that had spread about the girl who had come from humble beginnings. Others were curious, eager to see if the rumors were true. The grand piano stood in the center, its polished surface reflecting the bright lights. She approached it carefully, her fingers hovering over the keys for a moment, and took a deep breath. She closed her eyes and remembered her mother's words from years ago. Play from your heart, and they will see who you truly are. The first notes were gentle, almost tentative, but as she allowed herself to feel the music, they grew stronger, more confident. The melody carried a depth that spoke of her journey. The struggles, the small victories, the nights spent practicing in silence, and the hope that had never left her heart. The audience listened, some leaning forward, some closing their eyes, captivated by the story woven into each chord. This was more than music. It was a life told through sound, a testament to perseverance, resilience, and the human spirit. Halfway through her performance, she introduced a piece she had composed herself, inspired by her past, her dreams, and the love that had carried her. The music rose and fell, soft and delicate at times, powerful and commanding at others. It told of the laughter she had endured, the doubts she had faced, and the triumphs she had achieved. It was deeply personal yet universal, connecting with everyone in the hall. Some audience members were moved to tears, while others sat in quiet awe, fully absorbed by the emotional depth of her performance. As she reached the final notes, she allowed herself a moment of stillness, letting the last sound linger in the hall. For a brief second there was silence, as if the room itself was holding its breath, acknowledging the journey she had shared through her music. Then applause erupted, loud, sustained, and full of admiration. The audience rose to their feet, cheering, clapping, and celebrating the girl who had come from humble beginnings and now stood on a grand stage, commanding hearts and attention with her talent and passion. The judges called her forward, offering words of praise and encouragement. One spoke, saying, "Your music is extraordinary. It is not only technically impressive but deeply moving. You have a gift that goes beyond skill. It comes from your heart and your story. Never lose that." The girl nodded, feeling both humbled and inspired. She realized that her journey was not just about performing or winning competitions. It was about touching lives, connecting with people through something deeply human, and sharing a part of herself that could not be expressed through words alone. In the weeks that followed, the girl's reputation continued to grow. She was invited to perform at more prestigious events, offered scholarships for advanced musical training, and sought after by mentors who recognized her potential. Yet despite all the attention and opportunities, she remained grounded. She remembered the small house, the old keyboard, and the nights of quiet practice that had shaped her. She knew that her success was built on determination, love, and the belief that she could achieve something beyond what anyone had expected. Her relationship with her mother grew even stronger. They shared quiet moments of reflection, talking about how far they had come and the lessons they had learned along the way. Her mother often reminded her that while talent could open doors, it was the dedication, humility, and heart behind it that would sustain her throughout life. The girl listened, taking these lessons to heart, and continued to approach each new opportunity with gratitude, focus, and respect for the music she loved. Over time, she also began to inspire others. Young children from her town and nearby communities, some of whom had doubted her once, now looked up to her as a role model. She shared her story with them, showing that even in the face of doubt, ridicule, or hardship, it was possible to pursue a dream with courage and determination. Some children asked for lessons, others simply wanted to hear her play and be inspired. She welcomed them all, teaching not only technique but also the importance of heart, perseverance, and belief in oneself. The girl also understood the responsibility that came with her success. She used her growing influence to advocate for young musicians from humble backgrounds, sharing her experiences and opening doors for others who might not have the same opportunities. She spoke at schools, community events, and workshops, always emphasizing that talent alone was not enough. It had to be nurtured with dedication, patience, and courage. Her message resonated deeply with those who listened, inspiring them to pursue their own dreams with determination and hope. As she matured, the girl began to perform on even larger stages, sometimes traveling to distant towns and cities to share her music. Each performance brought new challenges, but she approached them with the same focus and passion that had carried her from the small living room where it all began. She remembered the laughter, the doubt, and the struggles, using them as reminders of how far she had come. Her music had grown richer, more expressive, and more capable of conveying emotion and telling stories that touched the hearts of her audience. One evening, after a particularly moving performance, she sat quietly backstage reflecting on her journey. She thought about the small house, the old keyboard, the long hours of practice, and the unwavering support of her mother. She realized that every step, every challenge, and every triumph had led her to this point.